So we know that pollution and invasive species are two major threats to the health of the lakes. Now we have to concentrate on solutions to protect this amazing resource because so many people depend on it, not just for recreation, but for business as well. Joining me now for a little perspective on the health of the lakes is Seth Borton. He's the head coach for Michigan's first varsity collegiate bass fishing team at Adrian College. Seth, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And congratulations on the designation. You have the full funding of the college backing your team.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique scenario because, I mean, with 7 other clubs that exist in the state of Michigan, you know, to have the financial backing just gives us a tremendous amount of leverage that, you know, others aren't going to have. So it's definitely exciting.
So what does this really say for the growth of the sport? You're having a lot of young people interest in it, and it's not just a bunch of guys going down and putting their line in the water for a couple of hours. This is something very different.
Yeah, it's exciting because now it allows if most people don't realize that there's high school state championships in almost 40 states around the country. So for those high schoolers to now have the opportunity to compete at the high school level, now have that bridge, so to speak, to go to the collegiate level and then, you know, pursue this at whatever level they're hoping to. You know, it's just the next step in the whole piece of the equation, so it's really exciting.
Now, here in the Great Lakes state, I mean, we're in the prime location for fishing. When was the first time you started fishing?
Oh, just like anyone, you know, when I was probably 4 or 5, I remember being taken out by my dad and then my grandparents, and so it started 100% at an extremely young age, and I've tried to involve my kids, you know, at a young age as well, and it's just been something that I don't foresee leaving us anytime soon because there's a lot of enjoyment out of something so simple. So
yeah, and so many people have passion for it, but what are some of your concerns as someone who, you know, lives and works along the lakes and uses it in that kind of situation? What are we worried about when it comes to the Great Lakes?
Well, I have several friends that have lived in other places around the country where the invasion of Asian carp as well as other invasive species have really been a huge detriment to the overall ecosystem, where, you know, the fish that they used to pursue now don't exist or can't really coexist with these invasive species. So just the biggest issue for me is that, you know, with the Great Lakes are utilized by so many different people for so many different things that if these things were to influence the Great Lakes, such as the Asian carp, and, you know, so far they've been able to adapt to zebra mussels and the round goby and that type of stuff, but because it's used by so many people, you know, if it were to be affected, it would influence not only commercial fisheries, recreational fishermen. Obviously, it was going to influence the tournament circuits that visit, you know, the Great Lakes, Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, from around the country. You know, we're not just talking about the local use of the lakes. We're talking about people that use this as a destination to travel to specifically for, you know, Lake St. Clair and its world-class smallmouth, same with Lake Erie, salmon on Lake Michigan. So there's a lot of people that are going to be affected if this really does come into play.
It would directly impact your sport.
Oh, no question. I mean, depending on the severity of it, but, you know, as my friends have indicated in their specific states, you know, the bodies of water that are affected by Asian carp and different things that have came to be, they're devastated. Like, they can't even be used for what they were, you know, using them for originally. So they're using them to shoot carp with a bow and arrow as a recreation, and they have derbies where they try to catch them in nets and see who can come in with the most weight. But other than silly things like that, you know, it's devastating.
Yeah, it can decimate
Absolutely.
an ecosystem. So obviously you guys have been talking about this on the fishing circuit,
Yeah.
about what can we do now to try to protect the lakes. What do you think some of the solutions can be?
Well, I mean, number one, you have to raise awareness, but anybody that's serious about the sport and just about fishing in general has obviously heard the horror stories around the country. So, you know, I think obviously the awareness is continuing to increase. You know, they've done different things with electronic gates and different things, but they've found, you know, even in Lake Erie and some of the other lakes, they've found remnants, DNA from the Asian carp. So, I mean, it's one of those things that you just hope in some way, shape, or form that it doesn't come to be as much of an issue as they say it's going to be. If it does, if they do get in, you know, that just you know, when zebra mussels came into play, they said this is going to decimate it. You know, this is going to be the beginning of the end. You know, the round goby, and somehow, the ecosystems have adapted. So if it does come to play, we're just all crossing our fingers that some way, not only can we combat it, but also, hopefully the ecosystems will adapt as well. So hopefully some of that will come to play.
So are you excited for the summertime and getting ready to get on the water, right?
This has been an extremely long winter, so to say the least, and so to see some open water and get the opportunity to engage with some of my potential recruits, as well as do different things with sponsors, I'm really looking forward to spending some time out on Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie, and places that we're essentially as a collegiate team going to consider home. So we're really looking forward to that for sure.
And what advice would you give to the fledgling fishermen and all of us who maybe would like to get involved in the sport?
In the sport of collegiate fishing, or just in
fishing in general?
Well, number one, when you have the opportunity to win prizes or make money at anything that you're passionate about, I think then it takes over from there. But just as a young age, from watching my kids engage in the sport, babysitters are expensive, but if I put my kids on a dock with a lake and put a couple of fish in a bucket, they're happy for hours. So I mean, that's enjoyment that, right there as a parent, and then, as a kid, I just feel like that's going to stick around for a long time. So, there's just a lot of opportunity within the sport, and, just with my own personal kids that, I just can't wait to bring them along and hopefully allow them to be able to compete within the sport, make a few dollars or win a few things, and if nothing else, have their gear paid for by their sponsors. So it's exciting.
And I think we can all relate to that. Thanks so much, Seth, for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.